Okay. Welcome to R3 Solutions webinar on finding 8A sole source contracts through the Federal Procurement Data System. This particular database is used by the government as an accounting system. Anytime they award a contract, modify a contract, they have to post it into this database. This is the only database where you can find and identify 8A sole source contracts that are expiring. So through this webinar, we're going to create um, ad hoc reports based on your specific industry codes, as well as 8A sole source contracts. We're going to create reports based on agencies so that you can get a clear understanding what agencies are really buying your services. So to begin with, what I like to instruct you on is how you actually can register here and obtain your own password and login information. So that's the first step that you will need to start with in order to be able to create a report. So if I go back to FPDS, the cover sheet, and what you see is requests when we were in recovery, they had to create reports based on how all the recovery dollars was being spent when the president came in. This is also the place where you can look at the small business goaling. On the previous webinar, I talked about how SBA tracks to determine which agency achieves their goals as it relates to small businesses, Hub Zone, 8A, service disabled, veteran owned businesses. And that's potentially a strategy you could use by even looking at the small business goaling, because that's going to tell you which agency actually achieved their goals. So by looking at this report, you can potentially target that agency, understanding if they didn't achieve their goals, maybe that's an agency that you want to target. So if you look at this particular report, can you see, I know it's small print, but can you see any of the headings?
Yes.
Okay. If you go across, it's going to identify the agency. And I also want you to look at these codes associated with these agencies, because this is how we can customize to determine create a report that will generate all contracts awarded by that agency based on these codes. So we're going to keep that information open. But if you go down and look at the headings, you can see where those agencies are as it relates to small business goals, 8A goals. So for here, you can see this was the Department of Defense, and thus far, they're only at 3.75% of their 5% goals. This is the actual amount of dollars that coincides with that percentage. So this may be a potential strategy. If you identify an agency that's not achieving their goals, well, maybe you want to target that particular agency. That makes sense?
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. So if I go back to FPDS, again, this is where you're going to see the small business goaling. Um, when I log in, and once you log in and get your password, you're going to have 4 different boxes where you can get various information from. But I'm going to start with Easy Search. If you start with Easy Search, this is where I can put in any industry and determine what agencies and what vendors are winning contracts in that specific industry. So can you give me an industry that you want to look up to see who's buying that services?
Real estate.
Real estate. So if I put in real estate, it's going to bring up, and I'm going to increase the font here so that you can see it a little better. it's going to tell you as of June 2nd, there has been 518,000 actions or buys as it relates to real estate services. If I go over here, it tells me the top 10 departments that are buying those services. And under those departments, the top 10 agencies that are also awarding contracts in those areas. If I scroll down, it's going to tell me the top 10 vendors who have actually won contracts. So as I said in my previous webinars, I'm not about reinventing the wheel. So I tell business owners, look at the top 10 vendors, service areas. Let's try to determine what services they're offering and what the government's buying for from that particular vendor. I'm going to try this one, TRC Global Solutions, rather than the typical real estate agent, just to see what type of contracts that they've won from the government. So when I go here, it tells me as of June 2nd, this particular company has won close to 3,900 contracts. And if you go down, you can actually see what NAICS code that particular company has been winning contracts in. You can also go a bit further and view that particular solicitation. And I want you to pay close attention to what I'm viewing behind scenes, because this is how we're going to create the reports. So the first thing that we're looking at is the award type of this contract, or how was this actually bought. This particular contract was a task order contract. And if you look here, this is a backdoor to the buyer, because understanding that this is a government accounting system, you know whoever is keying in that information about that particular buy is going to have some type of knowledge about that particular contract. If we go to the next box, where you have the award ID, this is the agency code. This is the code that we'll look at and create reports from based on this particular agency. If we find this is the agency that buys our service. Right here is the actual contract number. So when you're talking to that buyer about that potential contract expiring, you have a reference and a contract number that you can actually ask the buyer to reference when you're discussing this particular opportunity. If you go here, it's going to tell you when that contract was actually signed and when it was expected to end. In the first column over here, you have the action obligation. And action obligation means this is how much the government has actually paid to date for that particular service. Here is based in exercise option values. In government contracts, they're always awarded, if they're multiple year contracts, as base and option years. So you'll have a base year, which is the year one of that contract, and then you'll have multiple option years. So in this particular category, it's going to tell you the amount of money they funded for the base and any exercise years that have been exercised. So this would be normally the total value. If it was 2 years, they've already exercised under that contract. Here, based in all option values, that's going to give you the total value of that contract. So now you have complete information of how much that particular contract or buy was for from the government. Here, we go down, we have the contracting officer ID. We want to drill down to that actually agency that's under that department. This is their ID, and this is the actual agency that is funding. If we go over here, the 2100 code is the Department of Army, and under the Army, you have the Baltimore District Office funding this particular contract. So it allows you to drill down to the actual contracting office so that you can at least focus in on that buyer. If we go down here further, it's going to give you an overview of who that contractor was and where they range as it relates to number of employees or annual views. Also understanding that the government is driven by these goals. If this particular firm fit in either one of these categories, the box would have been checked. We go down further, it's going to tell us the type of contract. It was a firm fixed price contract, and we'll discuss what types of contracts that the government offer or provide a little later in other webinars. We go further, it's going to tell you where the actual place of performance is for that contract. So if I want to focus and narrow down on what contracts, I have a participant that's on the line that's from North Carolina. So if I'm trying to look to see what types of contracts have come out of the state of North Carolina or my particular county or city, I can create a report based on that information and what I'm asking the government, what I'm asking the database to search for. If I go to the products or services, it's going to tell me the actual NAICS code that this contract was awarded under, and then under, if you go down further, it's going to give me a description of the requirement. So this particular contract was for to appraise the value transaction of DOD. I don't know what DOD appraised value transaction is. Someone in the real estate industry may know what that acronym is for. But it's going to give me a brief description of that particular requirement. If I go down a little further, it's going to tell me how that particular requirement was conducted. It was a full and open competition, meaning that was open for anybody, whether it's a large business, small business, women-owned, it's open for everyone. They only received 4 offers, so it tells me the number of offers they actually received for this particular solicitation. And then that's pretty much the information that we can customize and get from this particular database. If I go back and go out, let me do that one more time. I'm going to put in real estate. And I'm going to look back at that same company that we just looked at. The other beauty of this website that I love is that you can actually download that particular company's, all their contract information. If you go over here to CSV, it allows me to open it up in an Excel spreadsheet, which allows me to maneuver the data. And it's going to allow me to get general information that I am trying to get an understanding about this particular company and a roadmap. I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. So when I create this report, the first thing that I do is sort it from newest to oldest so I can see where they are and what they've been doing. So don't worry about the negative. Again, this is a government accounting system, so they are having to reconcile the books. So is money in, they may have to de-obligate money and put it in another order because they didn't spend all that money for that particular task order. So if I go down and I look a little further, I can see when this company actually started getting into government contracting. And how much? They started getting into government contracting in '08, but if I sum up the total dollars, so since '08, which is, 7 years, they've won $71 million in contracts, and strictly from the Department of Army.
Mhm.
So I don't believe in having to reinvent the wheel. You have any questions?
No.
So do you understand how we not how you can just pretty much look at different companies and follow their blueprint?
Right. I agree. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Mhm. So that just gave us a general idea over on that particular company. Now, if I go back here, that's an easy search. So if you're trying to figure out how much a contract is, or you're looking at your competitor, or say you're out at events and people are telling you, I've won all these contracts from the government, you can always go into easy search and double check and verify what that particular company has actually won. The next area is standard reports. In the standard reports, it's exactly what it is: who, what, when, and where. I try to decrease um, my zoom here. I don't know how to do that yet. Okay, here we go. Okay, we got who, what, where, and when. So let's just look at who. And in here, if you're looking for a particular contractor, I probably still do need to increase it just a little more. If you're looking at the particular contractor, you can just do a search here and put in that particular vendor's name, and it can bring out all that particular vendor's information. And you're always doing it by a fiscal year period. And I always go back to the beginning of the fiscal year of the previous fiscal year. For instance, our fiscal year, the previous fiscal year right now would be October 1st, 2013 through September 30th, 2014. That's the previous fiscal year. The current fiscal year right now is October 1st, 2014, and this fiscal year ends September 30th, 2014. Make sure you record and emphasize on those dates, because that's what drives these reports. So now I'm looking at what? Again, if I'm trying to see um, where the government is buying the most, or if this particular agency is I want to search it by a particular NAICS code, you can come here to this particular area to search by a NAICS code. But I want to go more so here. Look at the where. The where tells a lot. Um, I use this report. And where are you from, caller?
Charlotte,
North Carolina. Huh?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. So let's look at North Carolina. And I want to see what contracts have been awarded in the state of North Carolina. So what I can do here is put in the previous fiscal year, just October 1st, 2013, September 30th to 2014, and put in, I can go over here and actually select and type out the North Carolina. And there's the code for North Carolina. Select that, and if I want to narrow it down, it's not going to let me narrow it down at this stage, but I'm going to go ahead and execute so we can get a general feel of what contracts are actually being performed in the state of North Carolina. Now, it's giving you a broader picture based on, again, the different set asides. But this particular database will allow me to drill down. So if I click here, I'll need the right click, and it allows me to drill down. I can drill down if I'm just looking for a particular county or looking for any of these particular areas. It can drill down. You can ask the report to drill down at that particular area. But if I want the broader picture, I hit award detail. So that's going to open up everything. As you can see, it's a pretty big file, and it's already telling you it's exceeded the maximum number of rows, but it gives me a broad idea who's actually buying services in that particular state. I can do the same thing here. I'm going to export this into a Excel spreadsheet so I can manipulate the data. It's actually going to go into a CSV. Okay, if I export it, it's a pretty big file, so it's taking a while. Open. So it is a pretty big file. Do you have any questions thus far?
No.
So while that's opening, we'll give it a little more time. And as you can see, these reports, they come up pretty quickly.
Right.
That's why I love about this database. Everything is in this database. You get an inside look of the government's funding, operation, everything. Okay. I'm going to close that one. And can you see the spreadsheet?
Yes.
What am I doing here? I think I got too many spreadsheets open. Yeah. Okay. Give me 1 second. Oh, it's still opening? Okay. Let's see where it opened to. Here we go. Okay. Now this is all the contracts that have been awarded in the state of North Carolina and the agency. So you have all the information that you would ever need about contracts awarded in your state. It's telling you the effective date, and they have a lot of stuff that I tend to eliminate so I can get a cleaner report, because all this information, it can get convoluted. So I just really delete a lot of the information that I don't need. What's most important to me is when that contract ends. This is how I'm able to get in front of that contract. It has date funded. I'm just going to eliminate many of these columns. Here I want is the type of contract, so I'll know what type of contract it is. Over here is the project service code, and that's the same as the NAICS code. So I'm gonna really delete this column too, because there's a lot of duplicate columns in here. But I want to keep the description of the requirements because that's going to give me a general idea of what that particular buy was about. And as you can see, the government buys everything. There's nothing that the government buys. They got toilet paper, they got, as you can see, towel machine, detergent. So you can pretty much see the government buys everything. These are the NAICS codes that we keep talking about and emphasizing. So I'll keep that. And then it's going to actually tell me where that particular contract place of performance is located. So we know that this contract and the place of performance for that contract is actually in Durham. And again, they do duplicate a lot of the information, and I just delete a lot of the duplication with these columns. Um, it also tells you in this column how it was competed. It was a full and open competition. It gives you as much detail as possible about that contract. If it was other than full in competition, say it was an 8A sole source contract, they would put it in this particular column. It's going to tell you what is solicitation. This particular column is for how they proceeded with the solicitation. I don't really want that information. So I'm going to delete that information. Here it tells me if they used a set aside. They're telling you they didn't use any set aside. It was a full and open competition. If I go and look here, I don't need a lot of that information either. Again, it's just information that you may not need. The ward type, if it was modified, and then the most important is the vendors. Who are the vendors? So this gives me a general idea who's actually paying in the state of North Carolina and where they're coming from. Because as I've indicated before, and here's the vendor's name, again, it's a duplicate information. You would have a lot of people outside of those particular states from DC coming and winning contracts because people outside of that DC area generally do not have any information on how to win these contracts. So you have a lot of people from out of state often coming to a lot of these these states and winning contracts. So it's also going to give me the total value of those contracts. So you'll have a general idea of what those contracts actually are worth. Okay, so this is a pretty clean report now. I know where the vendor's located. I know the vendor's name. And I have their information here. What I like to do is now just sort by the NAICS code so I can get a general idea where I fall in it. So do you know your NAICS code, caller?
No.
Your primary NAICS code. And we.
I had it. I got it. So I know I had it written down. Let's see.
Okay, let's look. Because these are all numbered by industry. So you're probably in the 5-4. That's interior designs. So I think we're probably getting close to but you can get a gist of the types of contracts and who's and where. And it seems to me you're getting a lot of contracts out of where work is being done is in Durham. Um, and you can see that's testing, and that makes sense because you got a lot of the university. So again, sometimes these schools or so you got graphic design. That's actually in Buncombe County. And you can go back and see what agency actually bought that service. And that was the Forest Service. So if you live in Buncombe County, and this is your areas of expertise, I would probably be contacting the agency in Buncombe County. It's telling you who actually won the contract. It's actually telling you where that vendor is located and how much. So do you want to look for some contracts that are in Charlotte?
Yeah, Charlotte.
So what I'll do now is try to go and sort the report, this particular report, by the state. We're going to the place of performance. And this is actually by county. And this is also where you can determine if there's a hub zone, where the hub zone contracts are located or by that county. Because again, I talked about counties that were in the hub zone. So what is Charlotte's County? Mecklenburg?
Yes.
So if I go to Mecklenburg, let's go to Mecklenburg. Okay. This is telling me the types of contracts that are coming and being awarded from Mecklenburg. And I like these, and this is the one that we had previously discussed potentially for you. Those types of contracts where you can expand your services into the facility support arena. So you're not pigeonholing yourself just into industry. So you can see that they are offering all different types of contracts as it relates to facility support. And that's what a lot of real estate agents do, especially those who are in the REO as it relates to real estate and as property management in government language. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
So you can actually look at the facility supports and all of the other. Here's one for, I see the government buys everything. Okay. And then you also, again, over here, it's going to tell you if it's sole source, what type of set aside that they actually use, and the amount. And remember when I showed you in the view, this column was the actual base year, and this was the base and exercise options, and this is actually the total value of this contract. And you can really see in here, this is what they've obligated to date. I mean, this is what they've obligated for this particular period. This is what the total obligation, meaning this is what they've actually paid that vendor to date. And this is the total value of that contract. So you have any questions regarding standard?
No.
And let's try another standard report. If we're looking for an agency, if I'm trying to determine a particular agency, say I see that the Center for Disease Control buys my service, and I want to see what contracts are coming out of the Center for Disease. I can actually create another report that can focus in on that particular agency. Actually, I'm going to still continue to focus in on North Carolina. And there's a military base there, or a couple of military bases there, but the closest one to Charlotte would be Fayetteville. So let's see what types of contracts are coming out of Fort Bragg. So I can do 10/01 to 2/13, the previous fiscal year, 09/30, 2014. And I don't know that department agency's ID number. So again, I can use a search here and just put in the Department of Army. And the database will find that the Army's code that we would need. We hope. Let's just put Army. Or it's probably going to do Department of Defense. It has to start with the top agency. So, and then drill down. So give me the Department of Defense. We won't. Let's try it again. Let's see if I can do it this way. Okay, it's not this. Let me do it that way. What we can do is always go back to that small business report and put in that goal. Let's try the agency ID. That's probably the problem. Okay. One more time, Paula. Okay, that's not working. Let's go back. There, still not working. Let me go back. I'll try it one more time. There we go. You can just actually go and select and scroll down. So if I'm looking for the Department of Defense, there it is. You can select that. That's their code. It goes there and execute the report. Oh no, something went wrong. Can only have it in one place. That was the wrong one. Let's try it the other one. Okay. As you can see, these are all the contracts that have come out of the Department of Defense. And we can do the same thing in drill. If I want to drill, let's say I want to drill down by the contracting office name. It allows me to drill down, as you can see, by that particular office. and let me see what offices and say, so I can also export this as well. And try to sort it by Fort Bragg. I think that's probably the simplest way. So I pull it up. Let's just sort this again from A to Z. And we can go down. So it gives me a general idea of the Department of Defense. I don't think this is a good example. But again, you can focus it on agency, and I'll go back to a previous report that I created through the ad hoc that's going to demonstrate it a little better. But you get the gist of what I'm saying and being able to drill down on agency. If you're marketing to that particular agency, you're going to have the information probably more so than what they would have because no one is looking at the overall picture. That particular agency is only looking at what that particular office is doing. This way, it gives you a broader perspective as you begin to target that agency. So now I'm going to go to your ad hoc report. Go to your ad hoc report, and this is where we're going to customize it and tailor it specifically for looking at A-to-A sole source contracts. And this will allow you to develop that strategic marketing plan where you can actually look at contracts that are expiring and going to the other database to see what firms have those contracts and if they are graduating from the program. So if it's a service contract, this works perfectly. But if it's a project-driven project contract, such as construction or anything that just you go in and you do it, you're done with, it's more challenging tracking those types of contracts. Whereas in the service industry, those contracts are cycled. Every 3 to 5 years, that same contract is going to come back out. So this allows you to get in front of those contracts, and it also allows you to market to these agencies regarding these sole source contracts, which the rest of the world will never ever see because those contracts will never be advertised just because they are considered sole source contracts or opportunities. So the first thing that I do is create a new report. But let me go back again. I wanted to show you one other thing. Under the ad hoc, if I look here, each time you create a report, you will have a personal folder. So under this folder, anytime you create a report, you can save it. So you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. As you can see here, I was looking for 8A contracts that were sole source just for the Department of Justice. I can go back and look at that particular contract, that report that I generated, so I don't have to build a brand new report. I guess something went wrong with that one again. I know what the problem was with that one. But let's look at HUD. And I can put here, and then, again, I'm always driven by the fiscal year, the previous fiscal year. And display. So as you can see, for HUD, again, I can export it, but it's going to tell me every 8A sole source contract and that NAICS code and description of that requirement, as well as that vendor that's come out of HUD. This is how you focus in on specific agency. But if I want to focus in on particular NAICS code, I can create a customized ad hoc report. So the first thing that I do is I select new. Will be a new customized report. And in there, you will always see these four boxes. So in the first box, I choose, and under that box, under the first folder, the first thing that I'm selecting is the dollar value. So if I click on dollar value, those columns that we discussed and viewed as it relates to base, action, and all options, what I'm going to choose is based in all option values because I want to see the total value of that particular contract, not necessarily what has been obligated to date. Am I going too quick
That's
for
fine.
you? You're okay?
Yes.
Is this overwhelming or is this making any sense?
It's coming together. It's coming together. Go right ahead.
Okay. On box number 2, this is where we're going to really build the meat of the report. So when I select on that award folder, everything that we were viewing behind the scenes through the easy search, I'm just going to pick out certain information because I am customizing and tailoring this for me. So all the things that were in the back is what I'm looking for. What I want to drill down to is the actual office. Because again, it's structured by the agency. Up here would be the Department of Defense. And then under the Department of Defense, there right here where it has the contracting department name, that would probably be the Department of the Army. And then under the Army, there's different offices. And as I indicated in the previous webinars, each one have their own set of money. So you can drill down by department and office. But right now, I'm just going to drill down by, I think I'm going to add the department as well. Here, and the second folder is where I talked about where you want to, if you want to identify the actual contract identification number. This is the column that you would select, but I'm not necessarily going to look at the identification number at this time. Here is the contract dates. What I want here is when does that contract actually end, because that becomes part of my marketing plan, and I'm going to track contracts that are expiring. The funding source, I'm not necessarily interested in. The marketing data, I'm not interested in. The contract information, I am interested in because it's going to tell me what type of contract it was, whether it was a firm fixed price, was it a cost plus reimbursement type of contract, exactly how did they procure that particular contract. I'm not concerned about the legislative matter. That's more so as it relates to construction projects and as it relates to these particular acts for that particular contract. The project or service information. I want to choose the NAICS code and a description of that requirement so I can get a general idea of what that requirement description is about. If I wanted to look for the place of performance, as we have done on the standard reports, I can, but I'm not going to pigeonhole myself at this time. I just want to give a general overview of all the contracts that have been awarded under my particular NAICS codes that I'm looking for. Project origin, I'm not interested in. Competition information, yes. If I scroll all the way down, and this last link is the type of set aside. This is key because this is where I can pull out the 8A sole source contract. Transaction information. I like to add that because as I indicated before, whoever on the government side is keying in this information is going to know something about that particular buy, and they often put in their email address. So that's a backdoor to the buyer, because if you have their email address, then you can reach out to them and let them know that you found that their information in the federal procurement data system. Vendor information. I want to know who has the contract. So I'm selecting contractor name, and I always select DUNS number, because oftentimes that buyer will not put that contractor name in there, but she has to put in the DUNS number. So if I look at, these are all my search criteria that I'm asking from the report. But what I want to do is actually rearrange the order of this report, because the first thing that I want to see is the type of set aside. So I can move that up to number 1. And then the second thing that I want to see is when that contract ends. Okay. I think I may be moving it too fast. Okay. All right, let's try it again. I'm just going to click on estimate. Okay, I'm going too fast. Let's just go here. I'm going to box number 3. It's not allowing me to go back for some reason. But I'm going to box number 3. Now I have to tell the report how I want it to sort and what I'm looking for. So if we go here to add filter, is where I'm really customizing the report. The first thing that I'm telling the report to look for is the type of set aside. So I select type of set aside and tell it I want it to only show values equal to. And under here, select attribute values. It's where you find the 8A sole source. And you can also look for any of the other, if it's hub zone source, sole source, service disabled. I look at sole source again because these particular contracts will never be seen by the rest of the world because there's no competition. So I hit OK, and it goes in this particular box, and I add it. And it'll always show up here in the second part of the report filter. The second component, what I'm looking for is, did someone else just join?
My screen went out. That's me.
Okay. The second information that I'm looking for is the NAICS code. So I want to tell the report to sort by a particular industry. And I'm just going to use this 541611 NAICS code because that particular NAICS code stands for Administrative and Management Consulting. And the government tends to put a lot of catch-all contracts under that particular NAICS code. And I add it, and it's shown up here. So if I wanted, again, to sort by any other particular area, I can, but this is the only information I'm interested at this point. When I go to box number 4, this is going to demonstrate how the report is actually going to look like when I'm through with it. Now I can save it, and it's going to go back into my personal folder. So I always like to save it under the NAICS code and what I'm looking for. So I'm saving this as 541611 8A sole source contracts. And it'll go into my personal folder. Now I can execute. And if I check this mark, it won't ask me each time to put in those same dates. So I still have to put in the fiscal year, the previous fiscal year's dates. And display. So now it's telling me under this one particular NAICS code, there are 137 rows. And I'm going to do the same thing that I've done previously, is export it into a Excel spreadsheet so that I can maneuver the data. Probably need to close some of the other ones. Okay. Okay. This is the next code. I don't know if this is the report that just came up. This is the one for North Carolina. I'm closing out that report. Okay, that's the Army. And let me export this again. Okay, so this is the report that we have actually customized based on a particular NAICS code and the agency. So now the next step, what I generally create is to look at and sort this by the newest to the oldest again. And I'm not quite sure why some of these have dates or don't, but then I go down to the first date that I see. So now you can see you actually have every year contracts that are expiring under that one NAICS code. So this is how you can position yourself to get in front of these contracts and try to market and get these contracts sole sourced to your business as an 8A if you qualify for the program. So if I go down to 2000, and I'm just going to look at where we are now. It's currently, it started at the end of the last of the fiscal year. So between now and the end of this fiscal year, under this one NAICS code, and let's go to 930. As you can see, you will have almost 3,285 contracts that are expiring. This is how you position yourself to get in front of these contracts. So I was also going to tell you the NAICS code, and as I say, we just created the report based on that one NAICS code, and it's going to tell you the description of that particular contract. If I go here, it's also now going to give me the dollar value. So if I'm in the 8A program and I see one, let's look at this 4 million. And as I indicated, they often will not put in their name, but they have to put in the DUNS numbers. So this particular contract is for $4,136,000, but I don't know who the contractor is. So the next step that I do is take that particular DUNS number and put it in SBA's database to see when that firm is graduated. Because if that firm is graduating, they can no longer keep that contract. So now that becomes a part of my strategic marketing plan. So if I go down a little further, under here, searching for a profile, I can put this company's DUNS number in it. And I can search. Now it's going to bring up whether or not that company is still in the 8A program. So this is the company that has the actual contract. When I go in and look at their profile, it's going to tell me who has that contract. Has the owner, it's a Native American woman on. But most importantly, it should have had a entrance date. So that's perhaps telling me that this company is no longer 8A. Because there's no record of it. Because if you look at other 8A profiles, and I'll give you an example, and let's look at 8A companies that have that particular NAICS code. So you can get a feel of what I'm saying by identifying or what's in these firms' profile that's going to demonstrate. I didn't pick a particular state. Let me pick a state. Let's go to North Carolina. Okay. Do you have any questions?
No, it's quite a bit. I'm taking it in. Go ahead.
Okay, so right now, under that NAICS code in North Carolina, there are 32 firms who have that NAICS code. And so when I look in, and if you look at their profile, there's always going to have an exit date. So that's what you're looking for, is when that firm graduates. So if we go back to the report, and let's say that firm was graduating, let's go back and look to see when the contract expires. It expires October 31st, 2015. And let's say the profile says that firm graduates August 1st, 2015. That firm cannot get that contract again. So now that becomes part of your lead list. Did you get that? And does that make sense to what I'm saying?
I understand. It makes sense. I understand.
So now, you think about it, as I said, it was 32 that I just pulled from July to, 3,200 contracts that are expiring, that are 8A sole source, that the rest of the world won't ever see. So out of 3,200, you should be able to win at least something or position yourself. So the strategy goes back to, if you see that's a contract that is expiring, that's in your industry, then your next step is to try to reach out to that buyer. This is program management support. That's easy. This is construction management support services. That's something that real estates could do. So you look at those $3 million and see if that firm can or cannot keep that contract. If they don't, then you're creating a separate report. So what I tell businesses, just create, first I would look at the market, look at the contract end dates. So from October, let's look at October. So I look at, these are all the contracts that are expiring next year. So I highlighted the next fiscal year. Now I create a separate sheet. So now this is my marketing plan for the next year. At least now I know what I'm chasing. And this just one component, because you're also going to continue to respond to source of salt notice. This is just another component of your marketing plan. But at least you have a feel of what's out there, and you can know each year what contracts that you're going to target that you know that are expiring that you qualify with. Do you have any questions?
Well, Paul, it sounds like the information is here. It's just a matter of knowing how to navigate what you have in front of you.
Absolutely. And it's information that most people aren't using because they have another software database. I think they're charging those people $7,000 a year, where they are pulling this information and selling it to them to get them in front of the contract. Whereas they're pulling it from this database that's free that you can do yourself. There's another database that's also, it's a little more user friendly. It's called USA Spending, but that information is also being pulled from FPDS. So this breaks it down. It's a lot more user friendly, but you can't create the type of customized report from this database.
Okay.
So if you look at USA Spending, it'll break it down by state. So I can look in the state of North Carolina at any given time, and it's going to tell me what type of federal dollars, whether it's contracting or grants, have been awarded and who it's been awarded to. So right now, as you can see, what's been awarded under this fiscal year to the state of North Carolina. They also track subcontracting dollars, and then it's also giving you an overview of the top counties that have won the contracts, the districts, they break it down by contracts and or grants, as well as who are the top prime recipients. But it's still all pulled from FPDS. They're just sorting it from a different way.
Okay.
And you can see where it'll tell you about that is actually, and any contract what's awarded to Department of Defense is always a 90-day delay. So it's telling you exactly what data has been, and it's coming from FPDS.
Okay.
Okay?
I see it.
And
Yeah.
do you have any other questions? Is this overwhelming? What are you taking away? What do I hear?
That's a lot of information. It's a lot.
Huh?
But I'm gathering, like I said before, the information's already here. Just a matter of, like you said, not reinventing the wheel and knowing how to navigate information and using it to your, to your skill set.
And that's how you pull in other people. And to me, the easiest way to get into this game is just what I've just shown you. And I'm saying it works because I'm currently working with clients who are taking this process. So what you're finding is people, the people who are graduating from the program, they have no idea how to reach you.
Mm-hmm.
So by you reaching out to them, a lot of them are like, "How'd you find me first?" And when you're talking intelligent and they know that you know the understand the language, they've been willing to um, collaborate. I have a client right now. I started working with him in February, and right now we have 3 or 4 teaming partners that are willing to begin subcontracting to them. So now that's an immediate revenue stream, but at the same time, what it's doing is allowing the firm to get the past performance under their firm. So when that contract ends, it's an easy transition to flip that contract, especially because that 8A firm cannot continue to keep that contract.
Right, that's what you said. Right, right.
So as you can see, those are the ones you start targeting.
Right.
With that being said, I'm just going to conclude the recording portion of this. And thank you for your participation. And I will send this recording to you when we end the webinar.